I'm here with Tom and Carl, and our next guest is RCP contributor and attorney Richard Porter. Richard, welcome back to the program.
Great to be here, guys.
So I want to start. We talked about Donald Trump a little earlier in the show, but here's a little bit more of him talking about the Comey case.
Comey was one of the people. He wasn't the biggest, but he's a dirty cop. He's always been a dirty cop. Everybody knew it. And it's, as far as the case is concerned, he gave an answer. It was a strong answer. He then verified it a couple of times because that was a very important answer. If he would have equivocated, if he would have been like a little bit less sure, that would have been very bad for him. So he gave an answer. The only problem is for him, he didn't think it'd be caught, and he got caught.
Richard, first of all, what do you make of Trump's legal analysis of the case? And is it helpful to the prosecutors to have the president out there talking about the case in this way?
Well, that's certainly highly unusual for the president to be commenting on a specific case. Let's just be clear about that. But this case really is ultimately about Trump too, right? I mean, this is I think what the issue really is that the FBI director worked with the then sitting president to try to concoct criminal charges against the incoming president. And while this is a case about perjury, a case about whether or not Comey was truthful in his responses to specific questions by the Senate, it's all within the context of what was the FBI director up to? I mean, the question was about leaking, right? I mean, so the whole context of this is Trump. So it's a very unusual case in that regard, because it's not very often that there's a prosecution being brought against someone really because what they were engaged in was an attempt to overthrow the presidency.
Carl, you see it that way?
Well, what Richard's talking about, that's maybe beyond the scope of this indictment, but it is the context of it. And you'll remember this, we all will. In 2016, James Comey put his hand on the scale against Hillary Clinton, released 11 days before the election day, released the thing, we're investigating her again, her server. You remember that long forgotten thing where she had set up an email address that was outside the scope of the government and was apparently doing State Department business and other things on it. Lanny Davis, who's also a friend of the show, he's our Democratic Richard Porter, and Lanny thinks it cost Hillary the election, and he uses RealClearPolitics polling numbers to prove it and wrote a book about it. It's really quite compelling. So Comey, when Trump comes in, so Trump wins, surprising everybody in Washington, including James Comey, and Comey seems, and I'm not talking now criminality, but he seems to then want to make amends. He wants to get back in the good graces of his friends in the Washington establishment. And they do this, a series of these dirty deals against Michael Flynn, the new NSC director. They send some FBI agents over there and kind of trick him and then write down stuff, say stuff that he said that turns out wasn't really what he said, and they get rid of him. They release this dossier that turns out to be just full of lies, made up stuff about Trump. Comey makes sure that gets circulated in Washington, briefs Obama on it, briefs Biden on it, then briefs Trump on it. So, and then has a series of meetings with Trump in which he's trying to save his job. And Trump asks him a basic question: if you know Trump, can I trust you? And he comes to the conclusion he can't trust him. And Comey proves that that Trump's instincts are right by going out into his car. This is Comey's account, not mine, and typing out minutes of their meeting. Trump never gets to see him, what he says he said. Of course, Comey always looks very noble in these conversations that he recounts, and then leaks them to the New York Times to try and get Trump in trouble with the special prosecutor. So that's the context of this. I don't know if any of that's criminal, but as I said in the first segment, it's certainly, to use the word that Comey himself used, it's certainly Weasley, and it's more than that. It's not what the FBI director should be doing.
So, but Richard,
undermining the president.
If someone, what do you think the odds of success are in this case? It'd be one thing to, what if the Justice Department brings this case and loses it? That's going to make things look even worse, I think, for the president. What are the odds of success here, given what you know about what the charges are against Comey right now?
Well, a couple of things. The venue in which this case is being brought is in the Eastern District of Virginia, not D.C., where Congress sits. And of course, the D.C. jury would be 90-10,
Right.
Democrat to Republican in terms of jury pool. So it's a great place to be if you're ever a Democrat that's facing a tough charge. But because it was during COVID that this testimony occurred on September 30th of 2020, he apparently did the testimony via Zoom from his home, and I gather that that's the reason why the Eastern District of Virginia is an appropriate location for this case to be brought. But I think beyond that, the case itself is really turning over the meaning of authorized. What is the meaning of authorized? And so it just reminds me of, gosh, is this one of those cases like what's the meaning of is? And the
That's
question
that's a Bill Clinton reference.
Bill
For those
Clinton
of
reference,
you who
right?
don't remember.
But in a broad sense, Comey was very brashly saying no to these questions about whether or not he had authorized someone at the FBI to leak. And there's testimony from McCabe, his deputy, that he did in fact leak information, and that he did so. After he did so, he told Comey, and Comey seemed to concur. I mean, that he felt like he'd been authorized by Comey. But the question is, does an authorization have to occur before the fact, or is after the fact sufficient, right? I mean, what's it mean to be authorized? Now, I mean, clearly, if Comey had thought McCabe had done something wrong, he could have disciplined Comey. And I think that's a point that the prosecution will make, which goes to the idea that there was clearly an authorization by Comey of McCabe's leaking. And look, the truth is, I mean, putting aside legal hair splitting, these guys were working in cahoots to try to bring down the president. I mean, that's what was going on. And so, in the investigation by the Senate of the Crossfire hurricane FBI investigation, that was the code name they used for their investigation of Trump. They're trying to get to the bottom of that. And Comey was blithely trying to pretend that, oh, no, everything was fine. There was nothing amiss here. And I wasn't authorizing anyone to testify, to leak to the New York Times. Now, one thing I want to quibble a little bit with the characterization about, I mean, his role with Hillary Clinton at the 11th hour in October was perhaps hurtful to Hillary Clinton. But remember, he whitewashed her criminal behavior back in July of that year. And so, Comey was all over the place. I mean, that was not an appropriate action on his part either. And what's interesting is that in his first term, it's not like Trump leapt out ahead of the Justice Department and pushed them to try to prosecute Hillary. He kind of let bygones be bygones, I think, not fully appreciating that the deep state, people like Jim Comey, were out for his scalp anyway. So,
hey, Richard, I want to go back to something I asked you when we started this segment, when you artfully said that it was unusual for the president to be so vocal. But my question really was, how helpful or harmful is this to the prosecutor in this case to have the president out there talking this way?
I think it probably makes things a little bit harder, just in the sense that one of the questions that I think the jury pool is likely to be asked is, did you hear the president? And, that sort of thing. And you already have a tough jury pool in the Eastern District of Virginia. It's a lot of government employees. It's a heavily Democratic voting area. So it's not that much more neutral than the D.C. Court would have been. So I think if you ask the prosecutor, should the president comment on this case, he would prefer not, right? But again, I mean, it's an unusual case in that it's really ultimately about Trump in the sense that they're trying to get to the bottom of what was going on in 2017 and thereafter with regard to the Russia collusion case, what happened in 2016 with regard to Operation Crossfire hurricane. And again, just trying to establish for purposes of history and the future that happened to Trump. And ultimately, that's what the case is really about. I mean, the statement.
Richard, let me ask you, you're an attorney, none of the three of us are, but I expect there's going to be a motion at the beginning, and Comey's lawyers are going to go in, they're going to say some version of this to the judge and say, this is a thoroughly improper prosecution, and bring out Trump's statements on Twitter, his threats, his already deciding that he's guilty, pronouncing his guilt, Pam Bondi, directing Pam Bondi to do this. Pam Bondi, Trump's own appointed U.S. attorney, wouldn't go along with it. People in the office advised him. And basically they're going to say, I'm speaking the vernacular, but they're going to say in legal language, this is not a proper prosecution. It was brought the wrong reasons. It's not due process. He was singled out for political reasons and asked for the indictment to be just tossed. That's going to happen. What are the chances of a judge agreeing with that?
It's a great question, Carl. I mean, they'll allege essentially prosecutorial misconduct that's tainted the case, and that my client can't get a fair trial. Typically the remedy for that would be to move the venue or something to take it away from the prosecutor. We can't do that with a federal prosecution. Of course, the president's speaking on a national basis.
Right.
I think it's one of those judgment calls that a judge is going to make, and I think that they're going to let the case go forward. And
that's your guess?
Yeah, I would think they're going to let the case go forward unless they just, I think they'll be overturned if they don't. Let's put it that way. I mean, if they're looking over their shoulder at a court of appeals, Comey's name has now been put into play. He's been indicted for a felony, punishable by 5 years in prison. And I think the court's going to want to let him have his day in court.
So give us the tick-tock on this. How does this roll out? What's the sort of timing? How fast do these things happen? And is this going to stretch out for years and years, or be faster than that?
That's a great question. And I don't know the answer to that, Andy, in terms of whether or not Comey's going to have an incentive to stretch it out. Perhaps wait until the next Congress. Could be. Usually there's ways lawyers can find ways to slow things down, but it looks like a pretty cut and dry case. This is not a sprawling indictment. It's not a 35 count indictment putting a whole lot of issues into play. It's a relatively tight case with just a narrow range of facts. So it's the sort of case that could be brought very swiftly to the judges, before the judge, really depending on the judge's schedule. So I'm not sure what Comey's incentive would be here, whether it's to move fast or slow.
The president says this is going to be the first of many. So
there'll be others, he says.
There will be others. I mean, this could be the start of something that goes, even though this particular case might be quick, it sounds like there are going to be a number of cases, and this could be something that's going on for some time.
Well, I think there's statute of limitation issues with a lot of the things that were occurring before, 5 years ago today. I mean, with regard to Congress, I mean, different cases have different statutes of limitation. Different types of crimes have different statute of limitations. This was this particular crime. The statute of limitations was running on the 30th of September. So that's one of the reasons why they tried to move fast to get it done. Otherwise, it would have been time limited. So I think a lot of the things that are the most troubling aspects of the hunting of the president are time limited, right? So I think what they really need to find, if they want to go after people like Brennan and some of the other folks, are perjury charges, things like that are not time limited still. So that's going to be the ultimate constraint, I think, on his ability to dig into what was going on in criminal courts.